Hello and welcome back to an Introduction to Web3 for Educators Part 2. This is the second part in a three-part series that's designed to help give you, as an educator, the foundation you need to understand what Web3 is and the potential impacts for teaching and learning. Once again, I'm your host, Dr. Mike Peck. And if you're joining us for the first time, just a little bit about me. I'm a director of technology in a public school district in Pennsylvania. I'm also co-founder of Ed3 DAO, which is a nonprofit organization designed to help onboard educators into the world of Web3. You can find us on Twitter at Ed3DAO. You can also find us on LinkedIn at Ed3DAO as well. If you wish to connect with me directly, you can find me on Twitter at EdTechPeck and on LinkedIn as well. So let's get started. So in part 2 of this series, we're going to be looking at Web3 in the classroom. And while there aren't a lot of Web3 technologies that are directly showing up in the classroom setting at the moment, again, this technology is very, very new. There are some signs and trends that we can look at that can help us understand how this technology might impact education in our classrooms in the near future. In the first part of this series, we looked more at the foundation, and not only that, there was a key question that I brought up, and that is, what is it that I need to know about Web3? And in this particular part of the series, we hope to really dive into that question and look at how this technology might impact teaching and learning in your classroom or in your school. We're going to look at the future of the web and how the web is impacting both teaching and learning and the future of work more broadly. And there's a few trends that we're going to look at, including the creator economy, how this technology can allow for new building blocks for teaching and learning, as well as how this might impact work and the metaverse. Last, we're going to wrap up by talking about digital literacies and how they may shift as a result of what we're seeing in Web3. So before we get into the second part of the series, I want to quickly recap part 1 of the series. So in part 1, we looked at what are the basics of Web3. We defined it. We talked about how this next generation of the web is bringing with it new technologies and new principles that are allowing us to connect more directly, removing sort of the roadblocks or the intermediaries like our big data giants like Google and Facebook and Amazon, allowing us to interact more directly with each other. We looked at key terms and concepts, including blockchain, NFTs, and the metaverse. We also talked about the principles that are being sort of used to design and drive the growth in this particular era of the web. Last but not least, we looked at Web3 in both the educational landscape, like potential implications, as well as how it's being used outside of education. So in this particular session, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into some of those use cases. So as I mentioned, the web, we've seen it happen in the past in terms of how it's impacted the future of work. For example, today, many of us are buying things regularly from places on the internet, whether it's on Amazon or you're hiring or buying directly from a supplier for something like clothing or shoes or whatever the case might be. We're even using the web for things like getting a ride to the airport, thinking like Uber or Lyft. You can rent a scooter using web apps. You can get DoorDash so you can get food delivered to you, from a restaurant that doesn't have a delivery driver. We've already seen how the web has begun to impact our ability to get what we want when we want it. So that trend we expect to continue to see develop further as the web evolves. But there are 3 key areas that we're going to look at, which include the creator economy, again, new building blocks for teaching and learning, and then work and the metaverse. So let's hop into the first one. So what is the creator economy? The creator economy is really a shift in ownership from platforms to users. Currently, if you look at, so there are some examples on this graphic here. So if you look at Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, these are major platforms that many people use every single day. The thing is that much of the value that's being derived from these platforms, if you look at Spotify, the average artist on Spotify makes $636, or YouTube, the average channel makes $2.47 when YouTube earns 15 billion annually. If we look at those platforms, much of the value that's being accrued stays with the company. It doesn't really go back to the users. And so when we're talking about the creator economy, we're talking about the ability to use new tools like NFTs. So in the upper left-hand corner, you can see an example from 2021 that approximately 3.9 billion had been generated in value in NFTs amongst 22,000 creators, meaning that the average creator was making a lot more. Now, I think it's important to note that this was during a bit of a hype cycle, and so that's probably not the same. That value probably isn't the same for today. However, the thing that we're pointing out here is that NFTs and these new technologies that are being built on blockchain are allowing us to develop new economic models where content creators can directly market to content consumers without having to give away a ton of value to the platforms they're using. And so the thing that this new technology can do is allow us to really drive value back to the individuals and not to the major tech giants that we see today. So how does NFTs or the creator economy, how does that show up in the classroom? Well, I love to highlight this one example. So this is actually from a friend of mine. His name is Dagan Bernstein. And so you can see on the left-hand side, I did list or put the name of his blog there. It's dagan.blog. And one of the things that he did in his classroom is he started an NFT club a couple years ago. And the intent of this club was to help learners understand this new technology and to be able to think about themselves as content creators. And so this was a club. It wasn't a course within the actual program of classes, but through this experience, Dagan shares in his blog that there was a lot of opportunity for his learners to think about themselves a bit differently, not just as consumers of web content, but then as creators of web content. Some of the skills that they had to exhibit throughout this project include things like project management. They had to understand timelines and how to make digital art in a lot of cases. They were able to explore the relationship between technology and art in this particular club. And they also learned ways that Web3 can empower creators. And so while this was a club activity, it was an opportunity for learners to engage with the new technology in a very controlled environment, help them understand how this technology can be used to empower them as creators. What's really interesting, if you do look at the graphic on the right, this was sort of like the catch that he used for them, or rather the marketing he used for the club. It was to get their interest in what NFTs can be used for. And you'll notice that on the right-hand side, there's a young man, he's 12 years old, who created his own collection that's sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so, there's an opportunity here that exists with this new technology that young people are gravitating to rather quickly. So let's talk about new building blocks for learning. So when we talk about our learning, much of our learning in a traditional sense is, and if you look at this graphic on the right, it's from Getting Smart, it really kind of captures very well, how our experiences vary when we learn both in school and out of school. So in school, our learning is very structured. It's very, we call it bundled in this image. It's siloed, so you have your science class, your math class, your reading class, etc. And each of those gives you a specific grade and you get a transcript. But what about all those experiences that are occurring outside of school in what they title the ecosystem? When we talk about having tools for expressing ourselves online or sharing recognition of learning, these new tools that allow us to own our data is going to give us the opportunity to rebundle that data in new ways. So I talked about in the previous webinar series that there's an opportunity in credentialing here, and that opportunity is actively being built on. Years and years ago, you may remember the digital badging movement. Well, with the Web3 technologies we have available now, particularly blockchain, we're able to uh, issue credentials and then verify that data and give the ownership of that particular credential to the learner. So instead of getting a badge on, say, like Badger the platform, and Badger goes away and I lose that digital badge, now using blockchain, if I'm issued a badge, it becomes mine, and no one can take it away from me, and it doesn't go away if the platform it was issued on goes away. And so we're able to, using this new technology, really begin to piece together our own learning journeys. And I think this graphic does a really great job of sort of illustrating that. And if I just move my person out of the way here a little bit, you can see on the right-hand side we have our ability to sort of piece together our experiences from learning both in and out of school can be enhanced when we talk about the use of these new technologies. This particular example is showing blockchain as a platform for credentialing. This is the EBSI, the European Blockchain Structure, European Blockchain Services Infrastructure, which is a blockchain designed for a lot of different purposes. But one of the key first experiences they're building on it is a credentialing system. So let's watch this brief video to learn a little bit about how it works.
EBSI, the first public sector blockchain in Europe, helps citizens study, work, and grow across the EU borders with verifiable credentials and digital wallets. With EBSI, we make documents impossible to fake and easy to verify anywhere at any time. Together, we reimagine mobility in Europe. This story illustrates a PhD student applying for specific courses in a foreign country. The credentials that are exchanged in scope of this scenario are European Student Identifier and Micro-Credentials. Between the Tampere University, the Kaunas University of Technology, and the EQAR, European Quality Assurance Register for Higher Education, in cross-border settings in Finland and Lithuania. Let's see the story that these actors have built together through the eyes of Anna.
Anna, a Finnish student, needs to upskill herself due to the switching focus to the circular economy, so she is interested in short learning experience outside her university. She requests an academic ID and a micro-credential for the completion of a specific course at Tampere University. She then applies for a course in this field at the Kaunas University of Technology in Lithuania by sharing her academic ID and micro-credential. The Kaunas University of Technology verifies the academic ID to provide Anna's entry to the academic system and micro-credentials as a prerequisite to enroll on a module. After graduation, Anna receives a micro-credential from the Kaunas University of Technology that she can now share with her own university. The value proposition is the simplicity and reliability of the cross-border verification process and the educational value for students. EBSI-conformant digital wallets and credentials can cater for these new developments.
With EBSI, students get full control of their education. With EBSI, we make documents impossible to fake.
So if we just really quickly recap that journey. So the idea here is that a person has a digital wallet, and they're able to take the experiences that they have, the learning experiences they have, whether they're a single course or a suite of courses. They're able to get credentials and add them to their digital wallet, and allows them to then share those credentials with potential employers, potential institutions of education they may be working with in the future. So if you think about like your experience getting your transcript from, say, college, this is a very arduous process. You have to email the registrar, or you have to call in at a certain time. Then you have to pay for that particular transcript to be sent by certified mail to. So the experience is very inefficient at best and frustrating in a lot of cases. But as you saw here in this particular example, Anna had very easy access to her learning credentials and could share them anywhere in the EU. As the world continues to become more mobile, as we become more global in terms of our interactions with others, having systems that quickly recognize learning and can verify them in a digital format is going to be really, really critical. So as I was saying before, one of the last things I wanted to look at is work and the metaverse. So the metaverse, and you can see the picture here on the right is an example of one of Ed3 DAO's gatherings in the metaverse space we built. The metaverse is allowing us to engage in new ways over the web, particularly when we talk about employment in the last, especially since COVID. Employment has become far more fluid, and a lot of that employment is now happening in remote situations. The metaverse can provide us all sorts of new opportunities to have online experiences, whether it's in the context of work or also in the context of social activities or even play. And so when we think about metaverse spaces, there's going to be a massive explosion in terms of the jobs that are going to be available that are solely remote. Now, they may not all be in a metaverse space at all times, but the metaverse and more generally online places where we gather will be places where we work quite often. And so these tools are not only ways for us to connect and work and learn, but we're also able to build community. So if we talk about, much of our lives are already being lived in some kind of digital way, as the technology and the opportunity to engage in metaverse spaces becomes more accessible, whether through 2D or if we talk about AR or VR, the ability for us to engage in these environments will grow exponentially. What does that mean for the skills that we need to have or impart in our learners to be able to engage in these new environments? When we talk about the future of work, play, and learning, and some of these things, these tools you would already be familiar with or may already be familiar with. If we talk about Minecraft education has been around for years, but Minecraft is a great example of a metaverse space. It's 2D, but it's open, and you can engage with other people in this environment. You can build your own places or your own communities or buildings. You can build with others. And Minecraft EDU, like I said, has been around for a while and has provided learners the opportunity to engage in community building there. Roblox has become a very popular game in the last several years. It's a tool or game that allows users to create their own games and contribute those games to the Roblox ecosystem. And that game has taken off in popularity in the last several years. On the right-hand side, you'll see a VR setup where learners engaging with this space. It's like they're fighting a fire, looks like with the fire extinguisher there. So when we think about these engaging environments, we have to think about the opportunity for us to have digital-first learning experiences. So most of us default to teaching happens in the classroom or in a face-to-face way. The opportunity is going to become increasingly accessible for us to have digital-first learning experiences. What does that mean for teaching in that context? Decentralization is really important, as I mentioned before. Our ability to gain access to learning pretty much anytime, anywhere via the web has already been around for about a decade, give or take. But what we're seeing increasingly is that those platforms that allow users to contribute to them are becoming very successful, like in the case here of Roblox. Learning through play is another very interesting opportunity when we talk about the metaverse. The metaverse allows us to engage in experiences that either by geography, by time, or even by our ability to even access a place. If you think about the possibility of walking through a heart, or searching through a cell, or walking through a volcano, those things are now possible with VR. And so learning through hands-on, through play, is going to become increasingly accessible. The accessibility, like I mentioned, getting places, so I kind of covered that point already, but What I also wanted to touch on here is the idea that we're blending skills together. So if you're building a game in Minecraft or Roblox, or you're building a community in Minecraft, these are very interdisciplinary skills. It's not like when you go into Minecraft, you have a math section and a communications section. These things sort of happen together. So when we think about teaching and learning, we need to think about our ability to make examples or learning experiences interdisciplinary, because that's really how the world works, is when it's kind of mixed together. It's not all neatly parsed up. So just to recap some of the big trends, and I kept it organized by trends here because I think it will help us understand some of the implications for our classrooms in the next slide. So just to recap, the creator economy, it's really empowering individuals to create, distribute, and even monetize their own content and services without intermediaries. We talked about unbundling of learning, where we're breaking down the traditional full scope educational programs and allowing us to kind of create more personalized learning experiences where technology allows us to connect those experiences together. In remote work in the metaverse, we're talking about kind of the shift towards decentralized, digital-first, both workspaces and even learning environments too. These new technologies are allowing us to engage in some really unique new experiences. So when we talk about the future of digital literacies, this has been a topic that has come up oftentimes in computers classes or careers classes. But oftentimes doesn't come up in like the core content areas. And what we need to be thinking about is digital literacies are going to be key literacies for the success of our young people in the future. If we look at the creator economy, some of the key literacies or skills there include entrepreneurship. We need to be fostering entrepreneurship in our learning exercises and experiences. We need to make sure that students are getting skills that are adaptable. The workforce is rapidly changing. The world is rapidly changing. How do we impart, skills for our learners to be able to engage in a world like that? If we talk about unbundling of learning, one of the core elements is learner agency. How are we imparting learner agency in our learning experiences or in our classrooms or in our schools? Same thing with personalization, helping learners navigate that complexity. Personalization is really great, but in the classroom, I often found that sometimes I need to scaffold for learners because they're not prepared for the complexity of all the choices they might have. How is it that we're providing supports or scaled supports for those learners that need it? And then also real-world application. How are we getting involved with bringing outside learning in? How are we recognizing that learning? It's an important piece of this puzzle. If we talk about remote work and the metaverse, living and working in a digital world is already a part of our young people's lives, but will become increasingly so in the future. And last but not least, how do we make sure that we impart global understandings and literacies in our learners? In other words, learners are going to be interacting with people from across the globe on a regular basis. How are we giving them the skills to be able to connect and communicate with others, from different backgrounds and different cultures? So that ends up, concludes the second part of this two-part series. And so if you are interested in learning more, I just would continue to, share with you the opportunity to join Ed3 DAO. Again, this is a free and open community, so if you're interested in learning more about Web3 and other innovative technologies, you can check us out on the web at ed3dao.com, as well as our social media sites at Ed3DAO, both on LinkedIn and on Twitter. Once again, thanks for joining us for the second part in this three-part series. We look forward to catching you on the next one.